Did you spend a lot of time planning and thinking about how you were going to do it? And were you scared?
Yes, I was scared. I was nervous. Better to try this solo freelancer thing out first. Do I want to work for another agency or do I want to chart my own path? I chose the latter. I'm the one making the decisions.
Do you have an ultimate vision for what you want your life to look like?
Doing more travel, doing more discoveries of restaurants, going to museums, do some more hiking, go to more music shows.
If you had to choose between happiness and success, which would you choose?
I think at the end of the day, I just want to be happy. Figure out what makes you happy.
Hello, Wayfinders, and welcome back to 101 Ways Out. Today, you're going to meet John McCartney, founder of JMAC PR. After almost 25 years in the PR industry, he left to create his own business. Now it's flourishing 5 years in, and he has several employees working for him. I want you to hear how he takes a thoughtful approach to the things that he's really good at and finds experts on the things he needs help with. He also puts a lot of intentionality on how he treats his people and coaches them up. Stay around till the end so I can share an update with you. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with all of your friends that are looking for inspiration. Talk to you soon. Let's start with you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and where you are in your life right now, what you're doing.
Hello, everyone. My name is John McCartney. I'm the founder of JMAC PR. We are a boutique PR marketing agency that works primarily with technology companies that are looking to grow and scale. And I've been working in PR for more than 25 years. And I've been the founder of JMAC PR for the past 5 years.
Fantastic. What were you doing before you decided to go out on your own and start your own company?
Yeah, so I've been working at PR firms between 3 big cities. So New York is where I started my career. And then from New York, I moved over to the Bay Area and was there for about 8 years or so. And then I wanted to be closer to relatives I have here in Southern California. So I made the move to Los Angeles at the beginning of 2020. And I was at the time working for another PR agency that gave me the opportunity to relocate from New York to San Francisco around 2013. And for me, it was a great door that opened because my backstory is that I'm originally born in San Diego, California. My dad was in the military. He was in the Marines. Then my parents divorced when I was about 7 years old. And then my mom relocated me and my 2 sisters to New York to be closer to her sisters and her mom, my maternal grandmother. So I basically grew up in New York, grew up in the Bronx. And all this time when I was growing up, I've always had a fondness for like, oh, what life would have been like if I were to go back to California. And then the universe sort of like presented itself when I was working at this PR agency and gave me the opportunity to relocate from New York to San Francisco. So I was working at this agency, and then around maybe 2019 is when I just sort of decided like, okay, what else is out there? I was still working at the agency, but I also felt like I wasn't really being challenged. I wasn't feeling any sort of upward mobility or potential growth opportunities. And then sort of like at the beginning of 2020, I sort of got to a place where it was like, okay, the agency that I was working at the time, they were going through some headwinds and presented an opportunity for me to like, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to work for another agency or do I want to chart my own path? And I chose the latter. Prior to that fork in the road, I spoke with a number of friends in the PR industry who have worked for themselves as a PR contractor or freelancer, sort of providing their services and support to other agencies. And I was thinking like, oh, why don't I try this model and basically be a PR freelancer for these other companies? So I started my agency, JMAC PR. The story behind the name is because that's my nickname that my friends called me, JMAC for John McCartney. And when I started out in 2020, obviously we're all going through the pandemic. And also I would just add that I was very excited about starting to build my business. And I've never built a business before. First time entrepreneur. I work with a lot of startup founders and sort of saw how they built companies. But when it came for me, I was like, okay, I'm starting from scratch. So I've talked to a number of folks who have done what I wanted to do and got a lot of good insights and advice. But I basically did the sort of basic, I guess, foundational stuff like filing, my paperwork for articles in corporation, getting the domain, looking at like a QuickBooks type of accounting program, and also investing in Google Workspace. So starting to get all those in motion. And then as I started to work for myself in 2020, I was really exciting. I mean, obviously we're all dealing with the pandemic at the time, so that presented a lot of challenges. But for me, being able to work for myself, being able to sort of go to companies, especially going back to folks that I've worked with before, like even former clients, and be able to hear from them saying, "Oh my God, John, I'm so happy for you that you have decided to start your own business. I would love to work with you," because one of the things that I kept hearing over and over again is how many people saw the value of the work that I provided. And to me,
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in reputation, and I'm a big believer in doing the best work that you can, because that's important for me. And to be able to go through my career, and then when I start my business, to have folks that I've worked with, like on the client side, say to me like, "Hey, we want to be able to start working with you." That really made me feel good. So towards 2020, and then even like 2021 is when business really started to pick up for me, still as a solo entrepreneur. And then it got to the point where the summer of 2021, I had all this business that I just couldn't feasibly handle by myself. I could have obviously said no, but I said, you know what? If the universe is saying, "Hey, let's have more folks want to work with you," then I'm saying, "Okay, I welcome all that stuff." And then it just got to a point where I reached a fork in the road where I needed to hire a full-time employee, which would have been my first. And so I did. Towards the latter part of 2021, I decided to bring on my first full-time hire. Leading into that, I decided to work with an fractional HR director, because I also didn't want to be like other PR agency owners where they did everything.
Yeah.
I only know what I know. HR and that world is not my wheelhouse. And I would rather have someone with that lens come in and help me, guide me, and lead that HR area. So bringing on a fractional HR person was great. But I mean, going back to sort of like your question, I didn't know at the time when I decided to like build my business that I would be here 5 years later and having like 3 full-time employees and having a number of contractors that I work with. And I actually had a call with a client that I've been working with for the past 2.5 years, and to me, I was reminded of like, I have a number of long term engagements with clients, some going back 2.5 years, some going back three. Heck, I got one client going back to like 2021. I mean, we're talking 4 years now. I mean, and I'm a big believer in relationships and what we can do to continue to cultivate and really grow the partnership. So I didn't know at the time that I would be here, but I will say that starting my business in 2020, it has definitely been a very pivotal moment in not just my personal life, but professionally. And it
Yeah.
really, I'm really proud of all that I've accomplished since then.
Yeah, it sounds like you've accomplished a great deal in just a short amount of time. When you were making that decision to leave the space that you knew, getting the paycheck, working for other companies, and decided, I'm doing this. Two questions. Did you spend a lot of time planning and thinking about how you were going to do it? And were you scared?
Yes, I was scared. I was nervous. And for those who know me, know that I'm a bit risk averse, because I was just so used to working for others. I was just so used to, like, to coin the term, depending on a paycheck,
Mm.
that I really didn't see in me that, oh, I could start a business. But when I reached that fork in the road, the one thought I had at the time was, you know what, John, better to try this solo freelancer thing out first. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work, and you could always go back to interviewing and applying for jobs at other businesses. But at the very least, at least try this out, see where it goes. Because I also like to live life without any regrets. I
Mhm.
want to be able to see things through, I guess. But yeah, I was definitely scared. I was definitely nervous. But I also felt like, you know what? I know my stuff. I've been doing this. I mean, at the time, I would have been in the industry for about 25 years. And I said to myself when I started this path of starting my own business, I said to myself, look, John, you got 20 years of great experience and expertise. You have clients that are saying, hey, You started your own business. I want to work with you. I am so proud of my reputation and what I built over the years, and I'm very protective of it. And I've also worked at other agencies where there were things that I saw that I liked, and there were things that I saw I didn't like. And for me, as I started my business, I also got to thinking like, wow, John, you could also shape this business in your vision in the way that you want it to be shaped. And a lot of that also includes like doing things that we're still doing at my company today. We're very one of the things that we're really big on is workplace wellness. And that's an area that is very near and dear to my heart. As some of my friends know, one of my favorite phrases is work hard, play harder. And, we work to live. We don't live to work. I didn't want to be someone that would be working 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
No, I believe in work-life balance. So to be able to put my fingerprints on things like workplace wellness as part of our DNA was important to me. But also just looking at, okay, I have all these years of experience and expertise. Why don't I use this as an opportunity for me to share my knowledge and insights with those that are trying to work in this PR industry that I deeply love and enjoy? Because I also felt like it was a responsibility for me. And the way that I'm wired, and I still sort of to this day, I'm a big believer of mentorship, of coaching and teaching and being able to pass along a lot of the knowledge that I have collected over the years to the next generation, because I do feel it's a duty for us who've been in the industry to sort of lend a hand to those who are trying to break into the industry and really build their own career. And this is not a knock on other agency owners, but I've seen some where they're like, no, you work for me and that's it. The paycheck is your workplace wellness. That doesn't really jive with me. So being able to, okay, start my business, feeling anxious, feeling nervous, but then reframing it into a way where, wow, I have a lot of opportunities here.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm so proud about. And to me, one of the things that really helped me be proud of what I built along with my team, because I couldn't do this by myself. I want to say earlier this year, my company was named to a list of the top PR agencies that are excelling in workplace wellness. And to be able to be named to this list was a huge honor. And it's just one of those things where I'm just like, wow, to be here, to compare it to where I was at the beginning of 2020, where I was at that fork in the road. I didn't know what my future would look like career-wise. But to be able to decide, like, I'm going to start JMAC PR. I'm going to start working really hard and be able to work with so many different interesting companies, especially those who used to work with me before, to be able to build a business, to be able to hire a talent, to be able to shape and coach and really mentor my team is a tremendous joy, and it's something that I'm very proud of.
It's wonderful. You sound like a very thoughtful person in how you approach things. And that came out even when you were talking about your first hire and how you brought in a fractional HR person to help you kind of get everything established. So aside from HR, just out of curiosity, who was your first hire?
My first hire was an account executive.
Mm.
I believe she was a couple years out of school. And yeah, she was working with us for about a good 2.5 years and then decided to pursue another career opportunity.
Yeah.
I will say that next month in August, as of this taping, I have a full-time team member who will be here for 3 years. And it's just
That's
one
so
of those
cool.
things that's like, number one, time flies so fast. Number two, I'm very appreciative, I guess is the word, and grateful to this one particular team member who has been with me for almost 3 years. And she's a rock star in the making. And I'm not naive, I guess is the word, to say that, oh, I'm sure other people have approached her like, hey, why don't you work with us? But she enjoys working here and she feels challenged. And I think that's one of the things that I'm also proud of, going back to the workplace wellness. I'm very intentional in my check-ins with my team. It's part of our DNA because we're in this remote work
Yeah.
culture that I do believe it's incumbent upon folks like me and other managers to check in with their team as often as they can. And I've been able to develop a very simple weekly check-in script that is basically based on 4 key questions. How was your week? What were your highlights? What were your challenges? And what is the one thing that you can do differently that will help you be more successful? It's a great way for the team to sort of talk about, their wins and the things that they missed on and things that they can sort of identify and work to improve on. For me, that also doesn't happen if I didn't have the courage to start my business.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go back in time and tell me
Mhm.
a little bit about what your upbringing was like and your parents, kind of how they raised you.
Sure.
What do they do for a living? And then what kind of expectations do you feel they had for you?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier in our discussion, so my parents divorced when I was like about 7. And then my mom took me and my 2 younger sisters from California to New York. And I basically grew up in a single parent household. My mom, her job, she was working 7 days a week. She had 2 different jobs. She was a bank teller, and then I think she worked at a bakery. But she was working 7 days a week because she had to support not only 3 children, but my grandmother was also living with us in a 1-bedroom apartment in the Bronx. And I remember looking back on it, like how it was pivotal for me because it showed how hard my mom was working to put food on the table and really show me like the value of having a strong work ethic.
Yeah.
So that sort of laid the groundwork for me. And that's something that I still carry on to this day. But yeah, so growing up in a single parent household, elementary school, junior high school, and in high school, I was the oldest of my siblings. And going to school, I was always in these honors classes. I always excelled in the schoolwork. It was just something that, for whatever reason, wasn't a challenge for me and be able to. So I was able to go through the school system. And then when I was in high school, I was encouraged to get a part-time job in the afternoon. And that also sort of built on my foundation of work ethics. So that also was very pivotal for me in my journey.
What was your part-time job?
My first part-time job, I was 15 years old and I was working at a deli.
So New York.
I was working at a deli, cutting cold cuts, making sandwiches. So that was my first part-time job. And then after that, I worked as a stock boy at a supermarket, opening up boxes and stacking the shelves and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. So then what happened after high school?
after high school, I began my undergrad career at one of the CUNY schools, City College of New York.
Yeah.
And my first major that I tried to pursue was mechanical engineering. And then because I was always good at math and science, I had aspirations of being an engineer, working at NASA, working with rockets and stuff. I was always and still fascinated with space and the universe. When I was a freshman, I also joined a fraternity and I also joined the school newspaper. So I was doing a lot of like extracurricular activities and it was fun. I mean, this is also part of how I'm wired. I just like to stay busy. So then I also changed majors. I went from mechanical engineering and then I tried to dabble in computer science. And then my last major that I pursued was journalism because I used to be an editor and write for my high school newspaper, and then also being involved with my school newspaper at City College. And I enjoyed it. I love writing. It was always something that I really was really good at. So I wanted to also then pursue a career as a sports journalist because I'm such a big sports fan. So I was doing that. And then after undergrad, I got a job at a small town newspaper in Connecticut.
Oh, cool.
I was doing that for 6 months. I was the sort of town reporter. And I remember as part of my full-time work was just going to the village, town village, main street, go to store, find the news, go to town hall meetings. And all of that stuff was really exciting. I just also got to a place where it was like, well, after 6 months of doing this, I do have student loans to pay. Maybe I need to find a better compensated career. So I was working right before graduation. I was working for a PR firm in Manhattan my senior year of City College. And I was a PR assistant is what they called it, which nowadays is, I guess, it's like a PR intern. But I was at the time learning about building media lists and putting together press kit folders and making copies and stuff like that. So a lot of that stuff I really enjoyed. So after 6 months of being a journalist at this small town newspaper, I decided to call back my former boss at this PR firm. And I asked her, like, hey, do you have any job openings for entry level. And luckily there was. So I decided to move back from Connecticut, which is where I was working and living at the time, back to New York and started my PR career. And
Wow.
here I am 25 years later.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that you had that experience as a reporter too. That's something I've always found so interesting. It seems like such a cool job.
It was a cool job, because I'm also, as most of my friends know, I'm very talkative. I'm very social. I just like talking and to me, as I'm also in my career, the one thing that I always go back to is just learning, being curious, asking those questions like a journalist. But now I'm also, as a public relations professional, I look at it the same way. I'm also looking at ways of how best to tell the story of my clients that I work with.
Yeah.
How do I help amplify the commentary and insights of the client executives that I work with? How do I also look at ways of helping more engagement from my clients' LinkedIn channel? So these are the things that I'm always thinking about. But a lot of that stuff is really the foundation is finding out and talking and being curious about different people and different companies and what they're doing and also just sort of seeing like a sponge of like all the news that's happening and even the ones that are very impactful to my clients' businesses. A lot of that stuff is really part of the journalism journey that I was part of, but also being able to apply that to my day-to-day work in PR. It's really great for me, just getting to know people and getting to know businesses.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that being very helpful. Is there anything else that you feel like shaped you as a child that impacts who you are today?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like, the first thought that I have as I'm thinking about this is one of the things that I'm very wired about is making sure that diversity, equity, inclusion is part of my DNA. Looking back at my journey, I've always been the one to sort of interact with different groups. Doesn't matter, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, deaf, it doesn't matter. It was just something that I was always committed to and very intentional to. It was just something because I think it's part of like just getting to know people. I think for me, it was always something like, okay, I want to know more about you and what you do and what are your thoughts here? And then for me, as I, moved along in my journey, I'm still committed to making sure that my life is reflective of DEI. These days, it's under attack.
Yeah.
And I think, for me, if I have a voice to stand up and really speak about the importance about DEI, then I'll continue to do it. And that's why I'm still like involved in DEI initiatives. Like I'm here in Los Angeles. I am part of my local PR trade group chapter. And I'm also one of the leaders for creating programs that are reflective of DEI. So I think, looking back, I mean, I think having sort of like that mindset of DEI has stayed with me. But I also will say that the other second point that I will make is I want to make sure that I'm still, I guess, quote unquote, real. I'm always keeping it real. I'm always grounded. I think that's something that has always stayed with me. Looking back on my journey when I was younger, even to today, I'm always been one to sort of never ever forget where you came from,
Yeah.
because I think that grounds you. I think that humbles you. And I think that also builds, I mean, for me, I just speak for me, like it's important for me to stay grounded in that sense, because it's also important to like never forget where you started from, never forget your story. And I think that also ties back to like PR and being able to like just be genuine. I think that's
Yeah.
the thing that I'll sort of say.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I love your focus and support for DEI. That is so important. And it's awful that it's under attack. It's awful that we're experiencing what we're experiencing right now. And I think people that can stand up for it and, like you said, have a voice, it's so important. Your commentary too about not forgetting where you came from and making it part of your story is cool, because I think, I don't know about you, but my background is different from yours. I grew up in the countryside, a very poor family in Texas. Both of my parents were still together. Questionable whether they should have been. But I always had a chip on my shoulder. Like, I moved to New York City. Everybody in New York City like seemed so successful. Everybody that was around me, their backgrounds were so different from mine. No one came from the family I came from, right? And I remember when I first started kind of talking about my background, this manager of mine, who was a really delightful human being, and I really liked him, was shocked because my dad was a truck driver. My mom didn't work. And he said, well, I don't understand. How do you have such a great work ethic? Why are you such a great employee? I don't understand. Because his dad was, or I don't know, his dad was some sort of professional. His mom was a lawyer. He just couldn't fathom that somebody from my background could be good at their job. So that was something that I always had a hard time reconciling. So I think it's beautiful the way you've expressed your story, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Thank you. Thank you for that. And, I think just to follow on the topic of just staying grounded, I would just say other folks should also look into finding ways that they can be real and be genuine. I think that's the one thing, especially for me living in Los Angeles, where the sort of reputation is like, oh, no one's genuine here.
Mm.
I would say that for me, for the folks that I know and interact with here in LA, they are pretty genuine because I'm also able to sort of like read through the BS.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe that's something I've learned through PR is like I can sort of like a radar, like, okay, is someone really being genuine or are they just spinning? Because, and I can sort of like see that. But I do think that as we, because, go through our individual paths in our lives, I do think that it is important to really be genuine because I also have said this in conversations about like, look, when we get towards the sort of end of our time on this world, I want to be able to look back and say, hey, were you genuine? Were you true to yourself? I think that would sort of help people sort of see like, was there value in what they did? And also talking about like the people that they've sort of touched, in their own way, as far as like our mutual friend, Olivia. I've been friends with Olivia for how many years? And then she just randomly like, oh, you and Vanessa should have this discussion. And I'm like, oh, great. Absolutely. And then right before we hit the record button, just talking about like how we have so many different mutual friends that we know.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah. It's a wild how life works. I love it. Is there anything that you wish you knew before you left your company?
No, not really. I think at the time when I was about to start my business, it was kind of like that feeling of, you know what, I'm just going to jump into the swimming pool and I'm going to go into the deep end of the pool and I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to, figure stuff out and just do it. It was just sort of like, hey, let's just do it. I mean, obviously I'm very also one to like do my research, but at the end of the day, I just wanted to, get things going, start the business and see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, just figure it out as you go along. But
you know that moment when you realize that you can't keep living the way that you've been living? You've probably heard several of my guests talk about that already. If that resonates with you and you're feeling like you're in that moment, you're in luck. I've created a 30-day program that's going to help you become unstuck, reconnect with your joy, reconnect with yourself, and reconnect with your values. We're going to work together to figure out your next step, your vision, and your path forward. This is an invitation for you to live the life of your dreams that truly lights you up. Visit 101waysout.com to get started.
What's changed for you, I guess, before and after? How has life changed?
I think there's a couple things as far as how life has changed. I think number one, the word that I immediately think of is I feel much more confident in myself. And I think looking back before I started my business, I will say that there was a sense of me like, oh, I'm just going to depend on the senior person, the agency owner, for all the decisions. Now I'm the one making the decisions, which is very empowering. And so I think the one word that comes up is I truly have grown more confident overall. I've also am learning and still learn about what it means to be a entrepreneur. And what I can do to build a business. I think that's the exciting part of this chapter of my journey. Even though my company has been around for 5 years, for me, I have bigger aspirations. I'm like, we should be 50 people, by now. But then I have trusted advisors who I work with. They gave me the sort of analogy like, look, your business is like a child. Your business is 5 years old. Are you expecting your 5-year-old to like break the 1 minute mile under 4 minutes? No. So I think that's the other thing too. It's just, just looking at ways to reframe things. So definitely proud of how far we've come, but also understanding we're not robots. We can only go as fast as we want to. And that's okay. And I think for me, I'm also learning how to just be a better manager, better leader. Definitely not perfect. There are definitely things that I could work on. Like, for example, I could be a better delegator, but I also feel like, wow, I've created this. Obviously, I've had people and helping me along the way. But yeah, I think we're doing some really cool stuff. And I will also add that what we're doing, I mean, I don't want to say like no one else is doing it, but I really truly believe the sort of dynamic that we have here at my agency, it is presented in a way that is not offered to other similar sized PR firms, in the sense of like, yes, I mean, I'm definitely involved and will be involved, but I'm also giving tons of career opportunities to my team to help them grow and feel challenged. Because I also feel like being challenged is probably the number one reason why most people leave companies. And if I could be intentional in creating these opportunities for career growth and finding ways to challenge my team so that they can grow and develop in their own way, then that's a win.
Yeah.
So, definitely feeling more confident, learning how to be a better entrepreneur, learning how to build a business, but also learning ways of like, how do I improve in my own day-to-day work?
How do you think about employee wellness, and what do you feel like you're doing that stands out, or is there anything that you want to do differently?
Employee wellness, I feel like we're doing things intentionally with respect to workplace wellness, like those weekly touch bases.
Mhm.
I will also add that one thing that we're doing at my agency that I'm pretty certain not a lot of other PR firms are doing, or even businesses, we actually have a transformational consultant who has been working with my team for the past 4 years. And what the consultant has been doing, and she's been tremendous. She's been so valuable to our overall company, is a couple things. Because number one, we're, in a remote work culture.
Mhm.
I am a big believer in mental health, and being able to have our transformational consultant come in and meet one-on-one with our team individually, just to see like, how are you feeling? What are some things that are challenging you, both personally and professionally? I think that's important, because I also come from a place more so now. And I mentioned before, like, the number one reason why most people leave companies is because they feel like they're not challenged. I would say like maybe the number 1A reason why people feel like they want to leave businesses, because they don't feel like they're being seen. They don't feel like
Yeah.
they're being heard. And I want to sort of flip the script and say, yes, we have our transformational coach. Her name is T. She's going to meet with our team members, myself included, individually, just to see like how folks are feeling, what's troubling them, what challenges they have. And T will sort of like help frame things, solutions, from a professional standpoint, like organization, like, or even like give like homework, I guess, so to speak, from a personal standpoint. Like, she encouraged me. I've been doing this for now a year and a half. She encouraged me to start journaling. And I've been journaling ever since. Like, I have this book called The 5-Minute Journal. Twice a day in the morning, I write down 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things that would make today great, a daily affirmation, and evening before I go to bed, my 3 highlights and the 1 thing I learned. And I think a lot of that stuff is also amazing for personal growth.
Yeah.
For me, looking at like, having T involved, doing, the check-ins, none of that happens if I don't start this business.
Yeah.
Again, this is my fingerprint on how do I do things differently than what other companies are doing.
It's amazing. No, I love everything you said. It's so super cool and super interesting and thoughtful. With your coach, and T, the transformation coach that's helping your company, is there anything that she's brought to you just based on what the employees have shared that you're like, oh, I need to address this, or I need to change this? Has there been anything like that so far?
No, I'm very, I want to make sure there is that sort of like confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that there's, I want to be protective of that. There hasn't been an instance where things needed to happen for me to sort of like, address things with an employee. So yeah, I would say that for the most part, in the 4 years of T's involvement with us, it's been pretty good.
That's good. No, but I'm just curious because sometimes I feel like, and maybe I'm abstracting from a different type of company culture that's maybe like more disruptive. But I feel like sometimes you have those coaches and they are like, oh, this communication needs to change, or there's something that they see overarching. Let's put this in place. But it sounds like with her, less of that and more, here's something specific for the individuals on your team that they can really, that's maybe tailored to them, that they can get something out of.
Yeah, like for example, like one of the things that one team member could work on doing better is reminders.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a time where I had to like constantly do the reminding for this one team member. And I'm like, I got my own stuff to deal with. Why am I also feeling like I'm being like a personal EA to a team member? So I've asked you, like, can you work with this employee on how to find a better solution to remembering things? And that's what she'll do then.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. There have been many times I can tell you for sure that I've worked with people that would love to have had a T for that,
Yep.
that exact sort of thing. That is a
No,
great
for sure.
example.
And honestly, it's like, I don't know why more businesses don't. I mean, I get there's the economics involved, but I mean, it's like if business, because I also come from a place of employees are the most valuable asset to any business. And,
Yeah.
so why can't business owners find ways to show the investment in their employees?
Absolutely. It sounds like you're doing a great job at that. And thank you for digging in a bit more on that because it's just really super interesting and inspiring to hear how you've gone about it. I am excited about your company growing because I think you're going to do great things with your employees. And that's the most important thing. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Next question. How has your income changed and what has that meant for you? Kind of pre-starting your business to now?
I would say I it was a good salary. And then when I started my business, it was definitely a rude awakening because I knew that, well, I wasn't going to be making that salary in the early stages. But I also learned like in the beginning of my business, I need to set up an LLC, which I did. And then I set up my tax status, I guess, into an S corp, which helps from a tax standpoint. So that's been a good setup so far. So me, like like probably like other like small business owners, they pay themselves a reasonable salary. And then, like most owners, they'll do what they call like an owner's draw. So that's sort of like my world looking back on before I started business. Yeah, it was very consistent. There was no surprises. Like you're going to get paid on the 15th and at the end of the month. And there was no like owner's draw. But now it's like, okay, there's all this stuff. And then also finding ways of like, looking at expenses because I also have a fractional finance director and we'll look at the books. We're like, okay, what does the numbers look like? And I think for me, especially this year, and I'm sure this is something that other businesses can sort of like see as well, businesses globally is going through some headwinds right now.
Yeah.
And so I have to also be a little bit more intentional of like expenses, maybe not go out to dinner all the time. Maybe, I could, you know, cut back on some PR softwares or things like that. But, a lot of that stuff is part of being a business owner instead of working for someone else. And all this stuff is part of me learning on the job about being a better business leader, being a better entrepreneur. That's sort of where I would, come from a compensation standpoint. And when I filed my taxes for 2024, my tax accountant, he encouraged me. He's like, hey, you should start upping your reasonable salary. I'm like, I would love to, but right now business is pretty tight. So once we
Yeah.
get to a better place, then I'll increase my reasonable salary to the level that my tax accountant has advised me to.
That's so interesting. That's fascinating to me that you use different professionals for all of the things that you're doing. It seems like that's good advice.
It is because again, I've seen and again, this is not a knock on other PR agency owners, but I said to myself, like, look, I'm not going to be the HR person. I'm going to give that to somebody else to lead. I'm not going to be the finance person. I'll give that to someone else to sort of handle. It's important. Like, I think that's also shows a sign of growth for me because I can't even imagine if I had to do everything. I mean, I truly believe I probably would have had burnout way sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have an ultimate vision for what you want your life to look like?
Yeah, so that's the one thing that I've learned recently is how to separate the business from the personal. And this is actually an important lesson I learned through T, my our transformational coach. Finding ways where I could depersonalize the company from me. So, like for example, I used to have this sort of habit of like when people like ask me, "Hey, John, how are you doing?" And then I would immediately go into, "Well, business is this," and I've had to like reframe it to say, "Hey, business is separate. How's John McCartney, the person?"
Yeah.
And that took a lot of learning and rewiring. So I think for me, for John McCartney, I just want to continue to enjoy life. I mean, as most of my friends know and my family knows, I travel a lot for personal. I mean, but being able to work remotely, I can just work from anywhere. Like, and I have like usually most times, depending on the city that I'm at, I usually like to book a sort of like a WeWork day pass and work out of their co-working space, which is what I did yesterday when I was over in Century City because I had dinner plans last evening in that area. And it just made sense, like because of LA traffic, like might as well just work at the place that you're going to have plans at
Yeah.
later that day versus like, I'm going to work from home. Oh, I got dinner plans at 7 p.m. I should leave at 6. No, I'd rather just like work there or wherever it is where I have plans that evening. So that's been super helpful. And also I could just work remotely. I mean, I think that's one of the beauties. And I think that's also something that I've shared with the team as part of our DNA. Like anyone can work from anywhere because everyone Everyone has a loaner MacBook that my business sort of extends to the team. So they have that. So I want to travel more. I'm going to go away this weekend for the 4th of July holiday. I'm going to go to Las Vegas just to get some sun, some pool time, nothing crazy. But yeah, so doing more travel, doing more discoveries of restaurants, going to museums, do some more hiking, go to more music shows. I love music. I recently saw Coldplay for the first time in Denver last month, and I brought some of my closest friends, with me. So that was exciting. Next week, I'm going to go see the Yeah Yeah Yeahs perform in downtown LA. So that'll be cool. But yeah, just doing, just continuing to live life to the fullest, I guess. So that's on the personal side. And then for the business, yeah, I'm just looking at ways to for the second half of this year, find ways to continue to grow the business. First half was pretty slow. I mean, to be truly honest. So hopefully the second half will be different. And also just finding ways to how do I become a better business leader? How do I become a better entrepreneur? How do I continue to find ways to develop my team and help them achieve more in their careers? So
Yeah.
those are the things that I'm looking at from both the personal and the business side.
Those are awesome goals. If you had to choose between happiness and success, which would you choose? And has your answer changed over time?
Easily happiness. People are like, oh, I want to make a lot of money, but does that truly bring you happiness? I think at the end of the day, I just want to be happy. I do think that as part of my ongoing journey, especially when it comes to mental health, finding ways what am I doing to work on not just my physical health, but my mental health and my spiritual and emotional health. Those are some of the keys that is always top of mind for me. And if I'm able to, and I've already seen it, my friends have seen it too. Yeah, I'm much more peaceful. I'm much more thoughtful. I'm much more balanced. I'm much more at peace. A lot of that took work. And to me, when I talk about this stuff, that makes me feel like I'm successful.
I love that. I know you mentioned the morning and evening routine that T gave you. Is there anything else that you're doing that you feel like is super helpful?
Meditating.
Nice.
I try to find 10 minutes a day to meditate, just focus on my breathing, no distractions, journal writing, meditating. I go to therapy, every other week. Been going to the same therapist for about 4 years. It's been super helpful. Going on walks. That's the one thing that I'm very intentional about because of working from home. From 12 to 1, I'll go outside my neighborhood and go for a 2-mile walk without listening to anything. Just go for a walk, go for steps. So that's also been helpful. A couple sort of self-help podcasts like Jay Shetty, like Mel Robbins, like Abby Bernstein. So they've been helpful too.
That's so interesting. Weirdly, I had a conversation with someone this morning and she mentioned literally the exact same 3 people you just mentioned, which is just crazy to me.
It's the universe.
Yeah, it is. It is. It works in such interesting ways, man. Well, thank you for sharing that stuff. Okay, now if you had advice for people who are trying to figure out what to do with their lives, maybe they want to follow in your footsteps, do their own sort of business, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think number one, figure out what makes you happy. Figure out okay, what is the thing that you are very good at that brings you joy? I mean, there's a phrase if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, which is sort of true. I mean, I love what I do. I mean, to me, doing PR and being sort of an advisor, a trusted counsel to my clients and the executives is something that brings me a lot of joy. I also will go back to before I started my business, I was never put in those positions of being able to speak with truth and have the backing because I always felt what if I say something that, the agency owner didn't like? Now it's this is my business. I mean, there's no other person that I have to report to. So a lot of that stuff is very fulfilling to me. Yeah. Figure out, what you're good at. That's going to help pay the bills. Because I also have said this in conversations with other PR friends, sometimes you just got to just do it. Do you want to continue working for somebody or do you want to just be your own boss? Because I also believe that, and I've heard this from other PR friends, where they're oh my gosh, I was working till 7 p.m., and it's number one, they're not getting any equity.
Yeah.
Most likely. And number two, it's imagine you working all those hours, but you're working for yourself and you're having direct impact on your client's business and their strategy and their approach. And you're also making a living. And because of that, you're also having full equity. I mean, wouldn't that be a little bit more lucrative than just getting a paycheck? So
yeah, it's awesome. That's great advice. What's the most liberating decision that you've made since you left your corporate job that you never would have been able to make otherwise?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Having thoughts of like, how is John today versus John before? And, I just go back to like a liberating standpoint, just feeling more freedom. Yeah. I mean, the buck stops with me. This is my name's on the door. And I think to me, that's a liberating feeling of knowing like, yeah, this is the work that we're doing. I'm trying to build something special. I also have the stamp of approval from other business leaders and how they see the work and the value that my team is providing. So a lot of that stuff is also liberating. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just sort of like starting a business, not working for somebody, challenging myself. I think that's liberating. I think getting that sense of freedom, having to, I guess, report to somebody, I think that's liberating. I think being able to say, yeah, you know what? We're doing some cool stuff here from a workplace wellness standpoint. I think that's pretty liberating too. So, so those are some of the things that would come to mind.
That's awesome. The last question I have is a new one that someone gave me. What is saving your life right now?
What is saving?
What is saving your life? What's the one thing that's saving your life?
What is the one thing saving my life? Oh my gosh. I think there's not one thing that's saving my life. I do want to sort of resurface a number of things that's been helping me, like the journal writing, like going to therapy, like going for my walks, like learning how to reframe things, learning how to recognize I've had a couple like sort of like tools that I put in the toolbox from a mental health standpoint through like some breakthroughs. So I think a lot of that stuff has saved my life, but also I cannot end this conversation without giving praise and gratefulness and appreciation to all of my supporters, my family, my friends. Without their backing, I would not be here. So I think that's something that I also need to be very intentional and call out.
That's sweet. That's wonderful. If people want to find you, how can they find you?
Yes. So look me up on LinkedIn, John McCartney, JMAC PR. Shoot me an email, john@jmacpr.com. And you can visit our website at jmacpr.com.
Fantastic. Is there anything that I did not ask you or anything that we didn't cover that you feel like we should have?
No, I think this is a really good discussion. I really enjoyed it, Vanessa. So thanks again for the opportunity. And thanks again to our mutual friend, Olivia,
Yeah,
for connecting
no
us.
kidding.
But I will say that being able to get to a place where you're like, you know what, do I want to work for somebody or do I want to work for myself? I think that's very pivotal for everyone. For those that have gone through that or the ones who are thinking about it, I think that's something that is very liberating in the sense. And I would say that everyone should try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for spending time with me. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with John as much as I did. It just goes to show you how important mindset is and that it is a constant effort to make sure that we remain in the right mindset. John does this really, really well, and he shared some amazing tips with us in this interview. Since I spoke with John, he has now moved into writing for Forbes as part of their agency council. I was just looking at his bio, which by the way is awesome, and I will link to it so you can read it, but also looking at the articles he's written and how you can grow your business on social media without spending a fortune, and tips for PR and how to avoid mistakes that most commonly get made. Amazing resources. I think they'll be helpful for all of us. Until next week, I hope you have a wonderful time, and I cannot wait to talk to you again soon. Bye.